Ladies and gentlemen, the playoffs are here. We will be going over our most anticipated matchups. We're going to go over the fallout of Black Monday and some of the head coaching vacancies. We are also going to talk about our top three, bottom three. But first, we're going to talk about teams that missed the playoffs that probably shouldn't have. You're not going to want to miss that. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
Good evening. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast, brought to you by Power 18 Radio and Secret Weapon Consulting. I am your host, CJ Medeiros. With me is my good friend and co-host, Adam Wright. And like I said, the playoffs are here. Or in the words of the immortal Jim Mora, the playoffs? I kid. So, like I said, we're going to go over, or we're going to start with teams that missed the playoffs. We're going to talk about some of the most anticipated matchups. We're going to touch on some head coaching vacancies. And, of course, we have the top three, bottom three, and our Fumblerooski fan box. But first, I would like to turn our attention to our very special guest, Nate Sloat. So, Nate, it's been a while since you've been on. We have a lot of new followers. Why don't you tell us who you are?
I'm Nate Sloat. Work with Adam a little bit over at woos, Holy Cross, doing production work there. Big football fan, big Denver Broncos fan, although we are down on the team right now, obviously. Going to be some turmoil in the offseason, so happy to be back on. I was on, I think, right before the beginning of the season where you had your Lions over Chiefs pick, which nobody liked, but ended up being right. So
damn right it was.
Last name too. So happy to be back on and looking forward to talking some football, some playoff football.
Don't worry, Nate. The ride never ends. For Denver, that is. But we are going to start out with playoff misses. Now, as we know, playoffs, some teams make it, some teams don't. And there are some teams that should make it that end up not making it. And, we all know who you are, Jacksonville. And, maybe there are some others like the Vikings who suffered through injuries. But that's not for me to decide. Adam, would you care to get us started?
Well, there's the obvious pick. That's the Jaguars, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks. This is a team that really looked like they were on the up and up, and they still kind of are. They finished with the exact same record that they did last year at 9-8. Problem is that clearly Geno Smith isn't the guy. And I think the biggest mistake they made this past offseason was signing Geno Smith to that large contract. They didn't need to do that. They needed to, they've run out of first round picks that they had that were high up there, that were good enough to draft a quarterback of that caliber, but now they're stuck with the Drew Lock and Geno Smith carousel. And the rust around him looks good, but that's the problem. The quarterback is not it. So they need to find that one guy who can elevate the rest of this roster to Super Bowl contention. Otherwise, they're going to be stuck in football purgatory for years to come.
Yeah, that's the thing with them, is that they kind of jumped the gun on Geno Smith, thinking like, oh, he's finally figured it out. No, he's Geno Smith, and he caught lightning in a bottle like a lot of quarterbacks, journeyman quarterbacks do. Case Keenum is a good example. Even Daniel Jones, but who knows? He has a couple years left to really tell that story. But there are a lot of quarterbacks that Ryan Tannehill, a lot of quarterbacks that kind of catch fire, then kind of fizzle out again. And Geno Smith had one good year, extend them, and now they kind of need to go looking through the draft, seeing if they can find a quarterback that doesn't have a lot of value in the draft and try to build them up that way. That's the only way I see them getting some good quarterback play going forward.
And Geno Smith was good during this time this year. 20-9 touchdown interception ratio and 3,600 yards. It's just not good enough. Like people confuse good with good enough to win a Super Bowl. Geno Smith was just not good enough. He's not the type who's going to elevate your roster. He's been a journeyman for years.
DK Metcalf needs a better quarterback. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You have a
That's
wide
true.
receiver like DK Metcalf, you need a kind of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen caliber quarterback.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. The tight ends that they have year in, year out are always really good.
Even a quarterback like Tua would work in Seattle, I think. Just someone like that who has an explosive arm and can make plays.
Yeah.
Also, I do want to touch on what you said about being good enough versus being good. Now, his stats, like you mentioned, they are good, no? However, we have to take this with a grain of salt, especially when you look at last year's stats, where he threw for over 4,000 yards. He threw for 30 touchdowns as well, and he only had 11 picks and a completion percentage of on the doorstep of 70%. Now, I'm sorry. Was he good? Yes. But was there still a fall off? Also, yes. And let's talk about the draft for a second since y'all mentioned it. They have pick 16. So they weren't bad enough to outright tank, but they didn't just have that extra bit of gas to make it to the playoffs. And at pick 16, unless you trade up, I'm here to tell you right now, you can kiss prospects like Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels goodbye.
Right.
So the question is, do you reach on a guy like Michael Penix or JJ McCarthy, national champion? Maybe someone like Bo Nix. I don't know. There's going to be no easy answers, and you used up all your early firsts, and, you made your bed now lying at Seattle.
Even that far back, like right in the middle of the pack like that, might be too far to get a Michael Penix. Like, I think their values are going to rise a little bit just because you got teams like the Broncos, you got teams like the Vikings who are going to be there. They're like, we need a quarterback right now or else, like, who knows what we're going to have. Kirk Cousins is gone in Minnesota. Russell Wilson probably gone in Denver. So who really knows if Seattle has a chance for a mid-tier quarterback in that spot?
You are correct.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, speaking of Denver, we're now going over to our favorite Denver fan, Nate. Who's your most disappointing playoff miss?
Definitely Jacksonville. I mean, when you start 8-3, you got to make the playoffs. They had the division really there for them the whole year, and really just kind of let Houston and Indy kind of hang around, and then just kind of fizzled out at the end. And I know they had injuries. Trevor Lawrence obviously was banged up at the end of the year. Christian Kirk had that major injury in the Monday night game, but I still think a team like that with all that talent, you got to find a way to make the playoffs. And, Houston definitely looks like the up-and-coming team in that division. You're going to have to battle with them coming up in the next few years. So really, you talk about the window for Trevor Lawrence and the team. Is it even that big? So I think really they needed this year where the Chiefs are kind of on the down low. The Bills kind of, who knows with them. When the AFC is wide open like that, you got to make the playoffs and see what happens.
Yeah, and the way I look at it with the Jaguars, there's a lot of, even when they started 8-3, they didn't look right this year. And to that, I look at play calling. I look at the coaching. I think offensive coordinator Press Taylor is way too conservative for a team that should be as high flying an offense as it should be. You have pass catchers such as Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, who was still good. You have Zay Jones. You still have Evan Engram, and you have Trevor Lawrence to throw to all of them, and a pretty good offensive line, and Travis Etienne Jr. There's really no excuse for being a dink and dunk offense like they were. They really need to fire their offensive coordinator. They already fired their defensive coordinator, which again another good riddance move because their defense should have been better. But overall, it just felt like a coaching thing. In the second half of the year, their real fallout was with the injuries. Trevor Lawrence was playing hurt, and they also lost Christian Kirk for the year. But the real issue here, the biggest issue, the reason they were not Super Bowl contenders this year, it's the coaching. It was bad leadership with this team.
You got to wonder maybe if that's the Doug Peterson factor. Because look at those Philly teams the Philly team that won the Super Bowl, they won with Nick Foles, explosive offense. And then after that, Carson Wentz doesn't look like anything like he once was, and the team needed an overhaul there. Could it be the same thing in Jacksonville where his coaching methods just kind of, he's good at first and then it just kind of catches up to him. And the league kind of figures him out.
It's possible, but I mean, I just think Doug Peterson's a good coach. I've always thought he was a good coach. Yes, he had his reasons to be fired from what he did at the end of the 2020 season. But at the same time, he was good enough to win a Super Bowl, and he made the playoffs a couple times after that. And Carson Wentz was not a good player after he tore his ACL, and they still managed to make the playoffs a couple of times. So I think there's value in that. And also on top of that, I think it's the offensive coordinator. I mean, the defense was okay for most of this year. I just found the offense to be so underwhelming. How does Calvin Ridley barely crack 1,000 yards this year? How does Trevor Lawrence did he even crack 20 touchdown passes? 21.
He got 21-14 to be precise, and he barely cracked 4K.
So that's just those are worse numbers than he got last year. Mm-hmm. And his top receiver was Christian Kirk. How does Christian Kirk end up being your best wide receiver the next year? Not to get on Christian Kirk at all. I'm just saying, when you have Calvin Ridley added to the mix and you can't utilize him to the point where he's your number one option,
yeah, Calvin Ridley.
That's not a good look.
Calvin Ridley was definitely a disappointment there. I think Christian Kirk had a really good season and kind of broke out. But Calvin Ridley needed to have a way better season for them to put up 30 points a game, I'd say. Because that's really what that offense should have with all those weapons.
Right. Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. He should not be a game manager. He should not be the guy who's barely cracking 20 touchdown passes. Those are numbers for a quarterback who's having a career year, who's just being carried by the roster around him. Trevor Lawrence has a good roster around him, but he should be the type of guy who's elevating it, not just playing dink and dunk. None of it made sense. And maybe I'm just pissed off and voicing my frustrations for naming this team to go to the AFC Championship and win 12 games. But I mean, there's no excuse for this.
Yeah, there's really not. And I mean, when you look at Trevor, I'll finish this quickly here. When you look at Trevor Lawrence getting hurt, or at least playing banged up, I know it's convenient to point the finger at, but look, 4 multi-interception games, 5 games where you don't even crack 60% passing, that is terrible. And when you consider this, he had 2 games, literally 2 games the entire year where he threw for more than 300 yards. And when you consider the fact this is a 17-game season, right? And when you consider that, he has, let's see here, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of a possible 17 games where he threw for more than 1 touchdown pass. That is disgraceful. And I think the only way to fix it is A, get healthy, and B, send your offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, to the curb. Also, it seems we've lost our friend Adam. But I'm confident he'll be back. He will be fine.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is young enough where you can still have that core team around. I just think with the division now looking like it's on the up, it's going to be interesting to see how it works out for the next few years, how competitive it is.
Yeah, and for me, one of the most disappointing teams, for reasons pretty much beyond their control, my pick, the Cincinnati Bengals. You were considered to be the front runner for the Super Bowl this season. You know what I mean? You fixed up the O-line. You fixed up the defense. You got Joe Burrow, who I believe is now playing on a big boy contract. You know, you have Mixon, you got Chase, you got Higgins and Boyd there. And then, despite all of this, you miss the playoffs. That is sad. I mean, truly it is. And another thing is that I will give Cincy credit, all right? I know they were hurt. Joe Burrow, what did he do? Like, hurt his knee or his ankle or something in preseason.
Yeah.
And from snap one, from literally week one, he did not look right. And I said,
they got off to that 1-3 start.
Exactly. And I said at halfway through the season, Burrow is obviously playing hurt, and you don't want to risk your franchise quarterback getting even more injured. So I said at the middle of the season, just punt the season. If you force him to stay and play, you are going to do more harm than good. And, well, look what happened. Then we had the mini little Cinderella run of Jake Browning before he was promptly smacked back down to reality. And I don't know. I don't want to be a downer because I do like Cincy. I do like Burrow. But the worst might be yet to come because you have guys like your right tackle, Jonah Williams, your wide receiver, T. Higgins, your slot guy, and Tyler Boyd, and a few others that are going to be free agents. And do you have enough money to sign them all? Probably not. I mean, you can probably, I was going to say one last thing. I'm sorry. You can give T. Higgins the tag, but you're only allowed one tag, and you're probably going to use it there.
Yeah, I think they'll be back because I think Joe Burrow is going to get healthy, and I think he'll probably be a very big contender for comeback player of the year next year. I think this was just a down year for him. I think the coaching kind of coached up Jake Browning and really gave them some competitive games. Like, I was surprised they were still in that game against Minnesota, like that close. And, you know, I think the coaching really coached up Jake Browning. I think that Joe Burrow is going to be back. And, you know, that division doesn't really excite me that much. Baltimore, Cleveland, I think they could come back down to earth. Pittsburgh is kind of in a middling kind of phase. So I like Cincinnati to come back.
That's fair. Adam, do you have anything to add or no?
Nothing too much. Just that, I mean, it's kind of a situational thing for the Bengals. They should, I mean, if everyone was healthy, Joe Burrow, most notably, they'd be in the Super Bowl. They'd be in the Super Bowl conversation right now. And unfortunately, it was over before it started with that training camp injury to his calf. He was never the same. It's unfortunate, especially since you and I both picked him to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I know. I'm kicking myself for it now. But then again, we probably couldn't see Lamar Jackson's MVP campaign or Joe Flacco's insanity run happening. So, oh well, we live and we learn. So that'll close the book on this segment, but forget the teams that didn't make the playoffs. We're now going to shift our focus to the teams that did make the playoffs when we break down our most anticipated matchups. Oh, and believe you me, you don't want to miss that. So don't go anywhere. This is the Fumblerooski Podcast. Welcome back to the Fumblerooski Podcast, brought to you by Power 18 Radio and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm your host, CJ Medeiros. With me is my friend Adam Wright and our very special guest, Nate Sloat. So as I teased earlier, we are now going to tackle some of our most anticipated matchups of the playoffs. The brackets are set, the teams are preparing, and ladies and gentlemen, playoff season is here. So we're going to switch things up here. Nate, would you like to start and tell us what you view as the most anticipated matchup for these playoffs?
So on Sunday night, I was sitting there on my couch watching the remainder of, forgot what game was on, but I was watching the remainder of that late slate game, and the NFC picture comes up, and in the 6 seed we got the Rams, and the 3 seed we got the Lions, and I jumped up and I was so hyped because holy crap, that's going to be a good game. Rams, Lions, Matt Stafford returns to Ford Field to play the Lions, where he couldn't get them a playoff win, but now in he steps as a former Super Bowl champ with that pedigree. He knows how to win. Jared Goff on the other side for the Lions hasn't gotten a playoff win yet. No, I take that back. Hasn't gotten a Super Bowl win yet, but also been to the Super Bowl, couldn't get the Rams there. Now is looking to be the savior for the Detroit Lions franchise, but you got Matt Stafford on the other side who was there for 10 years. The storylines are just unbelievable, and I think the teams match up so well. I think it's going to be the best playoff matchup of the week.
Adam, do you have anything you want to add? Or
Yeah, I like that matchup. It's my favorite one coming up. And listen, we could talk about the storylines for Matthew Stafford going back to Detroit. No one's talking about the other end, which is Goff coming, who's also facing his former team in the LA Rams. So it's a revenge game in so many different ways, and you might. This is going to be a popular upset game. The Lions they could be without their tight end Sam Laporta, and on top of that, the Rams are getting healthy. Cooper Kupp is there, Puka Nacua. They have Kyron Williams to run the ball as well. The offensive line is playing the best it possibly could. And Matthew Stafford looks like the Matthew Stafford of a couple of years ago, finally. So, this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be a popular upset matchup because the Rams they're loaded to the gills with weapons, maybe even more than the Lions. So that's going to be an interesting one.
They're very sneaky, and they've been a sneaky team all season.
mm-hmm.
The Rams.
They're 7-1 in their last 8 games, and the only one that they lost was in overtime on a kick return to the best team in football right now, which is the Baltimore Ravens. So you can barely even count that one because they actually danced with them. All right, but my pick was the Green Bay Packers at 9-8 visiting the Dallas Cowboys. Now, in hindsight, this wouldn't seem like a very anticipated matchup. Besides Jordan Love, in his first year starting, leading his team to the playoffs at 9-8 with a 32-11 touchdown interception ratio, over 4,100 yards, all great numbers. You know why I am really, really excited for this matchup? It's because of the history here. The past couple of games that these two have met over the past decade, in 2014 with the Dez Bryant no catch, then there was the other one with the toe tap by, I'm completely forgetting the other guy, the
Jared Cook.
Yep, Jared Cook's toe tap to get the Packers into field goal position in 2016 for the Packers run the table year with Aaron Rodgers. They started 4-6 to start the season. They won the rest of their regular season games, and they finished 10-6, snuck into the playoffs, made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. And along that road was the one-seeded, 14-2? No, 13-3. The 13-3 Dallas Cowboys, led by Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. They also had Dez Bryant that year. It was a close matchup, but they beat him. Here's another one, except it's not Aaron Rodgers this time. It's Jordan Love. And this is one that I am really, really excited for. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think so. One of those games was at Lambeau. The other game was in Dallas.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
this Dallas team has looked a little choky at times this season. Granted, most of it was on the road, but this is the playoffs. It's very different from a home regular season game. So I give the Packers a shot in this one.
Yeah, you can't.
And you just can't rule out the Packers.
I was going to say that you can't look at the Packers and say they're the 7th seed. They snuck in. They're 9-8. You can't look at them like that because they went in there at Ford Field on Thanksgiving and looked like a real team against the Detroit Lions. Can't forget that game. And Jordan Love has looked like he's gotten better as the season has gone on and now kind of looks pretty good. I think maybe you could say even better than Aaron Rodgers the year before for them. Like he's just a better fit for a quarterback right now for that team. So I think it matches up pretty well. You got Mike McCarthy on the sideline for Dallas. He's going in there wanting to beat his former team. A little bit of revenge game there. I think it's a pretty good matchup.
I mean, like it's basically the same roster as last year, except Jordan Love took it and did much better. So, I mean, the whole with Aaron Rodgers without Devontae Adams, if he doesn't have his favorite toy, no Devontae Adams means he's not going to do as well. Well, Jordan Love just took that roster and went 32-11 touchdown interceptions and took your team to the playoffs. So,
That's right. And a lot of people, like I think it was Nate mentioned, don't realize that is a bit of a revenge game, but actually for their head coach, Mike McCarthy. I mean, he's going up against the team that said, get out, you're no good, you can't win without Rodgers. And he is looking to break that trend. Will he do it? We'll see. But for me, what the game I'm going to pick perhaps isn't highly anticipated, but the sheer absurdity of it is what I love. And I'm talking about the Houston Texans hosting the Cleveland Browns. The Houston Texans, led by rookie sensation CJ Stroud, who, by the way, CJ Stroud, though I liked him at the time they drafted him, I said he was the best quarterback in the draft, I was concerned because I wasn't sold on the weapons they were giving him. But this man turned around and said, so, and went out and did his thing anyway. He battled injuries. He lost his best receiver in Tank Dell as well. And guess what? The Texans are still in the playoffs. How do you like that? And who will they be hosting? But the Cleveland Browns, who they're like over $200 million man, Deshaun Watson, the king of the massage parlor there. Oh, well, guess what? He's hurt. And Nick Chubb, your all-pro running back, I got some news for you. He also is hurt. Your tackles, Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin, also. You want to take a guess at what they are? That's right. They're hurt. And who steps in after you have to put up with rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson and some other quarterback whose name escapes me? Well, was it PJ Walker? And
they had PJ Walker and DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
That's it.
Did I just get it right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And those aren't the answers. So what do? You bring in old man Joe Flacco, who, get this, comes out and lights the world on fire. He's slinging the rock. He's taking this offense with two backup offensive linemen and your starting running back being Jerome Ford, and they're kicking butts and they're taking names. And on top of that, you have arguably the best defense in the league, led by guys like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. So when you stop and think about it, they have defeated all the odds to come to the playoffs. So you have one team. So neither team, I think, was actually expected to make the playoffs. One is headed by a rookie quarterback and the other a journeyman who we all thought his best days were behind him. It is the classic battle of old versus new.
Yeah, these are. These are two young teams and playing the best football that these two teams have seen in a long time. And I think it's really a shame that one of these two seasons has to come to an end this week, because it's just so evenly matched. I think when you got the Texans offense with CJ Stroud, how he's taken that team and has made it look really good. And then Joe Flacco on the other side, just defying. He was on the bench for the Jets practice squad, like basically almost retired. And now he has a good shot for the Super Bowl. It's such a good storyline. So I think both of those teams are fun to watch.
That's fair. And I forgot to mention these two teams actually met earlier in the season with the Browns destroying them. However, there's a catch. CJ Stroud was not playing, and now he is. And oh man, I do believe this is going to be a good matchup.
Yeah. And just the fact that it's not that Joe Flacco is there and they happen to be winning. He's playing a massive part in it. In the games that he has started, I'm pretty sure every single one of them he has thrown for over 300 yards. I think there was one where he didn't, but that's still he's killing it. This is a textbook Linsanity run. And if it continues, I mean, we've seen quarterbacks do well for short spurts of time. If they can just do it a little bit longer, just a few more games, we could find ourselves, it's the year 2012, and Joe Flacco is back in the Super Bowl.
And he'd have to beat the Baltimore Ravens probably.
He would, yes. If the Ravens get past the divisional round and the Browns, win their games, then yeah, then they would only have to meet in the AFC Championship. So, yeah, so those are our most anticipated games, and in my eyes, rightfully so. So we're gonna veer away from the playoffs. We talked about the teams that didn't make it. We talked about the teams that did make it and some of those matchups. But now, and for those of you who don't know, yesterday was Black Monday, the first day after the end of the regular season where coaches get canned. And there are some openings, and there are some pretty big names that might be on the move. But we're not going to speculate just yet, at least not until next segment. So I know you can't afford to miss that. So please don't go anywhere. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. It's caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast, powered by Power 88, Dean Radio, and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm your host, CJ Medeiros, with Adam Wright and special guest Nate Sloat. My friends, the aftermath of Black Monday is upon us, and we can consider it Black Tuesday now because another coach got canned and another one just might. So there are a few vacancies right now, and I will list them. As we know, the Carolina Panthers and Los Angeles Chargers and Las Vegas Raiders had their head coaches fired through the middle of the season. And since the season has ended, the Atlanta Falcons have actually got their heads screwed on right and fired the man who can't use his weapons, and Arthur Smith, after it was reported his job was safe, barring a collapse. But guess what? A collapse happened. The Washington Commanders finally parted ways with the eternal underachiever Ron Rivera. And before this show started, shockingly, the Tennessee Titans booted head coach Mike Vrabel. Well, that last one I do think was unexpected. So, what do we make of this, guys?
Make Mike Vrabel a Patriot right now. Right now. The worst of Black Monday is yet to come, with Bill Belichick looking more and more likely to be fired by the day.
Well, I was going to ease
according
into
to according to Mike Reese, apparently it is a Hail Mary that Bill Belichick is still with the organization by the offseason's end. But If you're the New England Patriots, now that Mike Vrabel has been fired, because let's face it, there's been a lot of head coaching vacancies. If you are New England, you speed up this process and you kick Belichick out the door as soon as you possibly can, because now Vrabel is available. Go and get him as soon as you can, because if you don't, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Commanders, all teams who could do the Panthers, they could do it. I mean, there's so many teams who need coaching right now, and there's some that are still in the playoffs right now that might say at the season's end, the Cowboys of the world, who might say, you know what, a guy like Vrabel, we could use someone like that, right? I mean, that's a team that doesn't quite have the coaching, but if they fall short, and they say we need some coaching that is going to get them over that hump, they could go for Vrabel as well. So if you are in the New England Patriots, or any other team that is interested in new coaching, you go and get this guy yesterday.
I'm looking at it like, if I'm Robert Kraft, I think Vrabel's a great coach. I think he's going to get another shot at head coaching an NFL team. But if I'm Robert Kraft, I'm thinking more outside the box, and I pick up the phone and I call Jim Harbaugh, because he's a national champion, undefeated season at Michigan, and I think he could walk in there and rebuild that offense. While you already have the defensive pieces already for a good team, I think he can make the Patriots a threat again. Where Vrabel, he's more special teams, defensive minded. What the Patriots need is an offensive revamp, which I think Harbaugh could give them.
Yeah. Well, I think the most notable thing with Harbaugh is he took Alex Smith when he was a 49er, and he revived his career. And then Alex Smith went to the Chiefs with Andy Reid, and his career success continued after he was a failed number 1 overall pick with the 49ers. So I like the way things are looking with Harbaugh on any offensive team. If you have a quarterback who's underachieving, I would go after Harbaugh, because this guy seems to be the quarterback whisperer. Also, another thing to note, Colin Kaepernick's only good years in the NFL came under Harbaugh.
Took him to a Super Bowl.
That's
right.
True.
They went to the Super Bowl, then they went back to the conference championship the year after that. And if it weren't for injuries the following year, they wouldn't have finished 9-7.
Yeah. And
actually, I think it was 8-8, but still.
About Harbaugh here. Apparently, although a lot of teams are interested in Harbaugh's not interested in all the teams. As we have heard now that it's probably going to come down to the Chargers and the Raiders, because the Raiders, who, by the way, stop me if you've heard this one before, have a successful interim head coach that all the players love, and they're going to push him out the door. Wow. History sure repeats itself, doesn't it, my AFC West compadre, Nate?
Yeah, it would only be more Raiders if they got Bill Belichick. Just cap it off with a...
Oh, yeah, well, they are intent on poaching anyone and everything from New England, so you never know.
Exactly.
So,
only problem is, I'm sorry. Only problem is, does Bill want to be Brady's boss?
Or does
Brady want to be? Does Bill want to be?
Or does he want Brady to be his
boss? Does Bill want to be working under Brady?
Probably not.
No.
And the way I see it, if I had to guess, I would imagine that now national champion coach John Harbaugh, the man who has mastered the competitive imbalance, if you know, is probably going to go to the Chargers. That is my thought. If you're a coach, I don't know why you'd go to the Raiders, and I certainly don't know why you would go to a team like the Panthers, where you will have the meddlesome David Tepper breathing down your neck at all hours of the day. But as for New England, Adam is very right. Today, Mike Reese has reported that there is a Hail Mary chance that Bill stays. And we do know that many in the front office and in Kraft's inner circle have singled out Mike Vrabel as a replacement. Whether you're pro-Bill or anti-Bill, these are the facts. But will they pull the trigger? That remains to be seen, because either way, you're still going to need a GM. But, so let's just say, for the sake of the argument, the Patriots do move on from Bill. They hire Vrabel as their head coach, and the Chargers are able to wrangle Jim Harbaugh, bring him back to the league. Does Bill Belichick go anywhere else? So if my hypothetical scenario happens, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Falcons, the Commanders, and the Titans would still be in play. Do you think he goes to any of those teams or retires or what?
I think he should strongly consider the Chargers, as Harbaugh should also strongly consider the Chargers. Any other one of those teams is probably not ready to compete. Is probably going to take around 3 to 5 years to get to that point. So the question is whether he wants to rebuild an organization, which in my opinion at 73, just go to a team that's ready to win and see how far you can take them with your coaching. Because his biggest strength is his coaching, not his personnel.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But I do think that the Chargers at this point would prefer Harbaugh. And I don't know. I mean, you look at teams that are young but have potential, I would think probably the Falcons and the Commanders. Because the Falcons, look at all those toys you have on offense. And all you need is a quarterback and you have a top 10 pick. What he'll use that pick on, I don't know if he's GM, but that's something to be decided. And the Commanders aren't a bad team. Maybe you just need some help in the defensive backfield. But on offense, you've got Brian Robinson and you have Antonio Gibson. And let's not forget, you have a 3-headed monster wide receiver, a very underrated one, that features Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson. Actually, Curtis Samuel might be a free agent. Scratch that, if they bring him back. And you've got Logan Thomas, who's a darn serviceable tight end. And you have the 2nd overall pick, too, I might add, if you need a quarterback. Hint, hint.
What if Dallas loses this weekend and they decide to pull the plug on Mike McCarthy? That could also be injured.
I don't know. That would have to be a Jerry Jones decision. And believe you me, Jerry Jones is as stubborn as the day is long. I mean, he kept Jason Garrett well past his expiration date. But if you're the number 1 seed and get bounced round 1, there's a chance. I would say there's like a 15% chance, but a chance nonetheless.
I think there's no way Belichick retires. And if he does, it's a big mistake, because I think there are some aspects of his legacy he needs to recover. I'm pretty sure he just passed Jeff Fisher for the most losses for a head coach of all time.
He wants that record.
He did, yeah.
Don Shula record.
So like,
but that's just due to longevity, not because of how bad it is.
Well, I think it has gotten that bad. That's the problem. I mean, this is where it's going to bite him in the ass, because in the 11 years that he has been a head coach, without Tom Brady as his starting quarterback for that season, he has made the playoffs twice. So if you keep on doing this, yeah, you might get the coaching record, but at what cost? I mean, you're going to lose your reputation. You're just going to be that one coach who only got to the coaching record because he was in the league for 10 years after he was supposed to.
The question
I'm exaggerating when I say 10 years, but like, he should go to what I'm saying is he should go to a team where he can actually start winning some games and be competitive again. I think that he can still do it. When he had Tom Brady, everything was good. So find that team that's already established with the quarterback. Find the Cowboys. Go get the Chargers, right? You can get the Falcons, and then whichever GM is there, they draft that quarterback, and all the weapons around him, it all takes care of itself. And also the Falcons, I know that defense was really bad this past game. I know that defense is better than how it played.
And Bill's
they have good personnel.
Genius.
Bill's a good defensive GM. That's something that, as a GM, I hate a lot of things about Belichick. His drafting with defensive players, whether it be late round gems or first round picks, he is money. He is really good at that. But he's a great defensive guy. And if he has the personnel on offense, then he can make it work. He did it before with Brady. He can do it again. And if he were to retire, it will forever look like those championships that he won were not because of Bill. They were in spite of him, and that Brady won the championships for him. That's what it's going to look like. I'm not saying I agree with it.
I'm starting to think that he doesn't want to leave New England.
No, I don't think he does now. I mean, I've heard he actually, no, he himself said he would prefer to stay in New England.
Right. Because he's not playing ball with the Crafts. He's not like working with them to try to get a trade together. He's under contract. I think he wants to stay and doesn't want to, take over another team with a non-comfortable situation. He has his kids on the coaching staff, all that. All plays a factor. I think he is comfortable where he is right now.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's entirely his choice, is all I'm saying. So there was another report out there that said if he wants to stay, he's going to need to lay out a detailed, like, step-by-step plan for Robert Kraft, and then would have to convince him, which means he's going to have to do some unorthodox things that he probably hasn't done and really probably doesn't want to do. But part of me, I'm not saying I agree, but I'm just saying part of me feels like that might be too little too late. So I don't know.
I don't think Bill should retire. It would be a very bad decision for him. And I also don't think he should stay in New England. I think his time is up there.
Oh, but guys. Mike Reese and Cam Marino have reported that the expectation around the league is that Vrabel is the top candidate for the New England Patriots head coaching position should it become available. What's interesting is, this is what he's noting, the Atlanta Falcons will heavily pursue Bill Belichick should he become available, and they're sniffing around him now. He is their clear target, and the Falcons desperately want him.
Well,
so before we end the segment,
maybe he could shift that 28-3 curse.
Well, if there's anyone who can, perhaps
it's the guy who did the damage.
Hey, you never know. Fate works mysterious ways. Well, we've about reached our time for this segment. So up next, we are going to move back to, the final week of the NFL season with our final top 3, bottom 3. Last one of the season, no Chris Kostic here, but we'll still finish it out strong. Don't go anywhere. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast, still powered by Parity 18 Radio and still powered by Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm your host, CJ Medeiros. With me, of course, is my good friend and co-host, Adam Wright, and our special guest, Nate Sloat. So here we are, final segment. We're going to do the top 3, bottom 3, and the Fumblerooski fan box. First up, top 3, bottom 3. Adam, my man, would you take it away?
Thank you, CJ. So for the top 3, so let me first start off. Thank you to Chris Kostic for making this segment possible. This has been a great season of top 3, bottom 3. This is the first year we've done it, and it's had some good success so far. So, salutations to you, Chris, as we continue on the final installment of the 2023 top 3, bottom 3. It's debut season. All right, we're going to start off with the top 3. The Buffalo Bills. So you managed to win 5 in a row. And on your final one, in a showdown against your division rival in the Miami Dolphins. You go in there and you beat them. And you were down for a large portion of that game. And you managed to come back. You win on the road and steal the division from the Miami Dolphins, who seem to have a chokehold on this division earlier on in the season. They had a 3-game lead on the division in the AFC East, and the Bills said, hold my beer. All right, the next one is the Dallas Cowboys. So another team that did not seem to be likely to win the division earlier on this year, but with a combination of the Cowboys playing better down the stretch and also the Eagles, their division rivals, falling apart, the Cowboys managed to rally, and they made it so that all they needed to do was win this week in order to clinch the NFC East. Not only did they do it, they blew the doors off of the Commanders. And on top of that, even if they didn't win this game, the Eagles lost yet again, this time to their other division rivals in the New York Giants. All right, the next one, the Houston Texans. They beat the division rival Indianapolis Colts. CJ Stroud is the real deal, and he is showing week in, week out that he is their guy. And Nick Caserio is doing a great job drafting and GMing with this team. I can see now, I'm seeing as a Patriots fan, I see now why Belichick was holding this guy captive in New England, because this guy knows his stuff. He knows ball. Nick Caserio knows ball. All right, bottom 3. Actually, we usually go on to get your thoughts. What do you guys think? Good list, bad list? Anyone who you'd rather have in? What are we thinking?
I think a pretty good list, although Dallas played Washington. How big of a challenge was that, really? So I'd maybe take Dallas out, but other than that, I think a good list.
All right, CJ?
No, I mean, I agree kind of with Nate about Dallas. However, it would be typical Cowboys fashion to blow that, would it not? Especially to your little brother in the Washington Commanders there, who, as we know, we're just trying to play a spoiler. But, I mean, overall, though, they did win the divisions. That's mostly why I think Adam chose them as winner. But as for Buffalo and the Texans, I mean, I feel like those are no-brainers.
Yeah, I mean, they had a couple of must-win games that they absolutely needed to have it, and they went in and they did exactly what they needed to do. All right, on to the bottom 3. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Don't let that final score fool you against the Tennessee Titans. Yes, it was a close game. Not that makes it any better that you just lost to your division rival. Not a good division rival. One of the bad ones that has been eliminated for weeks from playoff contention and just fired their head coach. Not that it's justified. This is a team that was 8-3 earlier on in the year, and you should have had this division weeks ago. You should have had it wrapped. But somehow, some way, by some injuries and some pretty bad play calling on the offensive side, you managed to play your way out of the playoffs. That's pretty bad. All right. The Atlanta Falcons. Not only did you a couple of weeks ago lose to your in your division, the Panthers, who just clinched the Bears' #1 overall pick, but you just got your doors blown off by the New Orleans Saints. Like, it was not close. And the defense is supposed to be better. It's supposed to be the strong suit of this team. And for some reason you blew it. That's not good. The Philadelphia Eagles. Ooh. This is one that really, I just can't believe it happened. You are facing the New York Giants, who are now on to their 3rd string quarterback. Not only was Daniel Jones hurt, but also they benched Tommy DeVito because he was playing so poorly. They're on to Tyrod Taylor. And you got absolutely pantsed by them. And on top of that, you had a couple players get hurt. AJ Brown hurt his knee. Jalen Hurts hurt his finger. And you still have Devontae Smith, who is banged up himself. So not only are you playing on Wild Card Weekend, you are playing on the road, and most of your star talent on the offensive side is now hurt. You couldn't be in a worse position relative to where they were just a month ago. It's getting bad in Philly. All right. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Philly definitely is the pick of the week there. More than the Jaguars, I would say, because they still could have controlled their destiny to get that number 2 seed, which is vital, I think, for playoff success. Because now you beat Tampa this week. Now you're probably traveling to Dallas. You could host a playoff game, but who really knows? You're going to have to be on the road for a lot of the playoffs. Just doesn't seem like they could have won that game, then seen what Dallas did. They like win and see what happens is basically like the motto there. And they couldn't pull it out against a Giants team that's just playing spoiler at this point. So for that, I give it to the Eagles, and who knows what happens this week in that playoff matchup. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I just want to mention something. The Falcons. Now, I've been clamoring for weeks, especially when the report came out that Arthur Smith was safe, barring a collapse, that I've said it doesn't matter how you finish the season, get him out. And lo and behold, the collapse happened. You played so badly against the Saints which are trotting out Derek the used car as quarterback, and you lost 48-17? My brother in Christ, that is 31 points. And then don't get me started on Philly, who lost to the New York Football Not-So-Giants. Wow. And Philly, you know what? The Super Bowl hangover's real, kids. That is my only that's my only saying for that.
The thing that doesn't make sense to me for Philly is how the drop off so fast from 10-1 to 1-5. Like it's just two completely different teams.
Hangover hit them late. But that's all the time we have for the top 3, bottom 3. So we are going to move on to the Fumblerooski Fan Box, where once again I will defer to Adam. Adam, take it away.
All right. Well, we welcome you to the Fumblerooski Fan Box, where we post a question filter on our Instagram every Monday, and we will respond with hot takes, questions, and more, and give you a shout out on our podcast. Respond to next week's Fan Box question to be featured on our show. So the question of the week here was, now that the regular season is all wrapped up, looking forward to the postseason, what is your boldest prediction for the NFL playoffs? We got some good ones, starting with Cooper Matthews, who said Dallas makes an NFC championship game and wins it. Now, you could have just said that they're going to the Super Bowl, which would have been easier to point out, but I see what you did there, giving some emphasis to the fact where they haven't been to an NFC championship since the mid-90s. So it is pretty notable that they would make it to the NFC championship as well. But you could just say that they're going to the Super Bowl, which would be even more noteworthy. And I think they have a chance this year. If they're going to have to overcome some major head coaching deficiencies from Mike McCarthy, but I think they can do it. There's been a team that has overcome Mike McCarthy as a head coach in the past and has won a Super Bowl. It could happen again. All right. Next we have Owen Van Slack, who said Browns make the Super Bowl. Am I dreaming, or is this 2012? Because Joe Flacco is looking like his old self. He looks a little better too. I mean, the way he throws, the way he's slinging it. Like back in 2012, Joe Flacco, of course he could throw it really well, but they were winning off their defense, like solely defense.
The Browns win this week, I might pick them over the Ravens. What's Lamar Jackson made of in the playoffs? He hasn't established himself really yet.
They're facing the Texans this week.
I know, I'm saying if they win.
If they win. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think with the Ravens, I need to see it to believe it with them.
Exactly.
Because Lamar Jackson has had electric seasons like this, namely back in 2019, and they didn't do anything. They were one and done. So looking towards this season, I could easily see a team like the Browns, or we could even point out the Bills, or even the Chiefs. The Chiefs have some Super Bowl they have Super Bowl experience. They've been there, done that.
Mhm.
I need to see it to believe it with the Ravens. Of course, they deserve to be favored this year, but they haven't been there yet. They haven't done it. And until I see it, I'm not going to believe it yet. All right. So this next one, Alex Nardone, he said the Dolphins will pull off the upset against Kansas City. So Kansas City is hosting in this matchup. The problem is the Dolphins are not a battle-tested team. They have faced good teams, but I say they're not battle-tested because they haven't beaten any of those teams besides the Cowboys. And the Cowboys on the road, as CJ alluded to earlier on this episode, barely even counts as a competitive team. So the way I look at it, I have to give it to Kansas City still. But
the only way Miami wins, in my opinion, is if the Chiefs play badly because it's so cold too. I could see it being like, remember that San Francisco Green Bay playoff game a couple years ago? That was like 13-10. San Francisco went in there.
Yeah, where the Packers lost to a team that did not score a touchdown. Yes, I remember.
See it in kind of one of those games if the Chiefs play so bad at home. The Chiefs play so bad at home that they can only score like one touchdown or something like that. Then maybe Miami wins, but they're not going to score 30 points in 10-degree weather in Kansas City.
Yeah, I just don't. Now, this is a bold prediction, so I respect it. And it is something that is possible because Miami does have a pretty good team. The only reason I say it's probably not going to happen is because, number one, this is a warm weather team. Number two, this is a team that just has not been able to beat competitive squads. At least not yet. Maybe it could happen. Could happen this week. I don't think so. All right. Nate Sloat, our special guest here, said Packers upset Cowboys. I'll let you take it away with this one.
I can see it. For the reasons we listed earlier, Packers in previous playoff matchups against the Cowboys seem to have their number. Cowboys they really get their fans to believe in them just to crush them 10 times harder. The 7 seed has not beaten the 2 seed since the 7 seed was implemented into the playoffs yet. The Green Bay Packers with a young quarterback, really kind of little expectations. Cowboys are the 2 seed. They could have 2 home playoff games, which is huge for them if they win this week. It'd be just like them to come out, underestimate their competition, and lose to this young Packers team that looks really good right now. And then Mike McCarthy just goes in there, doesn't have his team show up. I can see it.
It's not only that, it's the fact there's just so much history behind the Packers and the Cowboys that I can just see the Packers pulling that upset. Just because the Packers just might be in the Cowboys' head, in their heads, especially since a lot of these players on the Cowboys team were on those other teams, right? Especially in 2016. Dak Prescott was the starting quarterback then too. They were 13-3 and they lost in overtime. And that was a team it was a hard fought game, but holy crap, it's got to put something in your head where the next time you face them right now, you're going to be, even though it's a different starting quarterback for the Packers, they're going to be thinking, man, I don't know if we can do this time. All right. The next one we have, Colin Ray said the Texans make it all the way to the AFC Championship game. The Texans are a team that has played much better than we thought they would. In fact, most people didn't even have them in the playoffs. It went from that in a blink of an eye to them having expectations to make the playoffs. In fact, a lot of people now think that they kind of underachieved in the later goings of this year. For a couple of reasons. CJ Stroud was out for a few games, so they had to start Davis Mills. And then on top of that, they lost Davis Mills. They lost Tank Dell. Their offensive line had a little flurry of injuries going on. So you can understand why they had some trouble towards the end of the season. And I would believe in this a lot more if they didn't get bit so hard by the injury bug. But you're without Tank Dell. And CJ Stroud doesn't look quite like the guy that we saw earlier on this year. I still think he's the guy. I still think he's their franchise's savior. They did a great job drafting him. Problem is he doesn't have that much around him. He was able to do more with less before, but there's a difference. We said this with Patrick Mahomes before the season started. There's doing more with less, and then there's being asked to do something with almost nothing. And what they have is almost nothing. If Nico Collins is your best wide receiver, then that's it. That's going to be it for him. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they beat the Browns and they go on another Linsanity run. Let's see. But I'm not going to bet on it. All right. Next one is Grayson Mortimer, who says Ravens choke, which could mean a couple of things. When are they going to choke? Are they going to make it to the Super Bowl and then choke? Is this even going to be competitive? Are they going to choke at the end? And which game is it going to be? But again, I mentioned this earlier on in the fan box. I need to see it to believe it with this Ravens team. We have not seen Lamar Jackson win. They've only won one playoff game, and it was on Wild Card Weekend against the Titans. You're going to brag about beating Ryan Tannehill?
I think
in the wild card matchup.
I think they need to go all the way because this Ravens team has proven they can beat San Francisco.
Right. So by default, you look at this team as you look at this team as the best team.
Yeah, they should go all
in the league.
Way.
Yeah, I feel like they are Super Bowl favorites, and I feel like any loss would be considered a choke, especially when it seems like every other team is hideously flawed, and the championship could arguably be theirs to lose.
The AFC is wide open for them.
Yeah. Yeah. If they don't, then it's a problem. But again, I still need to see it to believe it. Is anyone else hearing this cutting in and out? Are you guys hearing each other clearly, or is it just my connection?
No, I'm hearing you guys fine.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so then it's just me. I just hope when this recording comes out that our audience doesn't hear this, because it's been a headache for me just hearing you guys. All right, that's all the scheduled content we have for today. But do we have any other thoughts before we end the show tonight?
No, I don't believe we do. I know I don't. Nate, do you have anything to add?
Just excited to watch these games this week. There's a lot of good matchups.
Oh, yeah. I tell you, playoff football is something else. And, may your favorite team not get eliminated. Best of luck to you guys who do have teams in the playoffs. But that will do it for us tonight. Thanks for listening. We have new episodes out on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's taken off. We also have all of our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram, labeled at Fumblerooski_podcast, to keep up with our podcast and latest coverage on NFL. Also, be sure to follow our TikTok at FumbleRooskiPod. And that will do it for us tonight. And we will see you next week. Over and out.